You legit must have been so angry with your wife to bash her head in and leave her bones exposed. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Keisha Jackson and it's Tuesday, which means it's Trigger Tuesday. This week is going to be a bit of a heavy week. I don't want to lie to you guys. I've been getting a lot of people telling me that the stories I've been telling lately haven't been gruesome enough. Last week I spoke about Pierre Basson. He was a little bit of a misfit. And I thought his story was whack. But it is what it is. I'll leave a link up ahead for you guys to check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. Before I get started, I just want to put a tiny little disclaimer in that the story I'm going to be telling today is in fact violent and it contains scenes of just terrible things. So if you are a sensitive viewer, I would suggest you give this one a skip, but please give me a thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button because it helps. Today I want to talk about Ronald Cohen. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. Ronald Cohen was born, I'm just going to call him Ronnie. No, I'm kidding. Ronald was born in Bloemfontein in 1932. When I researched him, there wasn't much of a family history. All it said was he was born into a very artistic, loving, supportive home. He was very smart, well educated. He went to study economics at the University of Witwatersrand. He studied at Wits. Ronald was married before, but unfortunately his marriage to his first wife ended in 1958. Ronald then went on to meet a lady by the name of Susan Johnson. Now, I don't know if it was Susan or Susan, but it seemed like it was a very English family, so Susan is what I'm going to go with. They met in 1963. At this time, Ronald was a very successful 34-year-old businessman, and Susan was at the tender age of 18. The couple would then go on to marry in 1963, and they would have two kids by the name of Jonathan and Jacqueline. Jonathan at the time was 3 years old and Jacqueline was 1. Now in 1967, Ronald's fortune was growing. They were living in Cape Town at this point when he married Susan. He went on to buy a 2-acre property on Millionaires Row in Monterey, Constantia, and at the time it was 12,000 rand. They built the house on the 2 acres of land, and the house was named South Cape. So Ronald was getting super busy, business. And Susan was like, well, I want to take the kids on a holiday. Is it cool if I take the kids on a holiday to the wilderness for a week? And of course Ronald's like, yeah, sure. Go for it. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? On March 30th of 1970, 3 years after they had built the house and they were living their lovely lives, they had their 2 kids, it was all wonderful, Susan took herself and her kids on a weeks-long trip to the wilderness. April 5th of 1970, Ronald goes to Cape Town International Airport and he picks his family up from the airport. It was reported that he left for the airport at around 7 p.m. and that they did get back to South Cape at 7:30. When they got back to the home, Susan had put the kids to bed for the evening, and her and Ronald proceeded to have a lovely dinner in the library. Now, from what I read and understood was this house was huge. So the library led out to a balcony, and I think it said that the balcony was up, the library was upstairs, because it's a balcony, not a stoop, whatever. And they had their little dinner at around 8 p.m. Like the bubble story, I want you guys to keep track of the time. They are enjoying their dinner. Their housekeeper, Yvonne, turns down for the night and she goes to bed. At around 10:30 p.m., Ronald gets up to go to the bathroom. You know, you go to the bathroom during dinner. Ronald said that he had gone to the bathroom and it had taken him about 10 minutes. There wasn't much about her background either, just to point that out. He said he had left Susan for about 10 minutes. And when he returned back to the library, he opened the door and he had seen that there was an intruder inside of his home, and he had held his wife with one of his arms around her neck and the other one he was holding an object. He had said that when he looked at his wife, when Ronald looked at Susan, she was trying to grab onto him for help. He then went after the intruder, but he couldn't get to the intruder because his wife was between the two of them. So I just want to play this scene out, guys. Someone breaks into your home. They grab your significant other. Wouldn't you throw something at them, go for them from each direction? He then tried to grab a brass ram's head statue and smash the intruder, but there was a little grapple, and then Ronald stated that he blacked out. When Ronald came to, he found his wife laying on the ground. He then kneeled down onto his wife and he shouted for help. While all of this was happening, Yvonne, the housekeeper, said she had heard 4 to 5 thuds that were extremely dull, and then it was quiet for a few moments, and then she heard a few more thuds. After which she heard her boss shouting, "Help, help," and then he ran into her room. So now Yvonne said that her room was quite away from the library because she thought the thuds were a door banging back and forth. You with me, guys? The intruder comes in. Ronald tries to save his wife. He can't get to the intruder because his wife is in the way. He tries to save his wife, and then he blacks out, and the next thing he remembers is his wife laying down, and he's calling Yvonne for help. Mr. Ronald then says to Yvonne, "Someone has broken in. Call the police. I'm getting my gun and I'm going." End quote. Did I say quote? Quote, end quote. So now I'm thinking to myself, why are you fetching your gun? Are you gonna go around your property looking for this guy? Yvonne is I'm gonna go to the library and I'm gonna check what's happening, because she's like me. I'd be super duper curious. She follows Mr. Cohen into the library and she sees Mrs. Cohen laying unconscious on the floor. Yvonne did state that Mr. Cohen looked extremely distressed and shaken up. Shortly after 11 p.m., Pinelands Police Department, Pinelands, what? A land of pies. Pinelands Police Department receive a call from Mr. Cohen himself. Now remember how he had asked Yvonne to phone because he's going to go get his gun. He says, "Come quickly, send police to my home. There's been a break-in and someone's been murdered." 10 minutes after, police arrive at South Cape and they are greeted at the door by Mr. Cohen. Now, Mr. Cohen's shirt, I'm going to call him Ronald. Ronald's shirt was stained with blood, and he also had visible scratches on his arms to show a struggle from someone, allegedly. The police then proceed to Mrs. Cohen's body and they examine it and they determine that she had unfortunately passed away. I'm going to give you a quick mental picture of what Mrs. Cohen looked like. The police proceed into the home and they find Mrs. Cohen laying dead on the floor in the library. She was in the library. Someone killed her with a candlestick. Cluedo solved. Jokes, guys. I shouldn't even be joking. This is serious. Her head was shattered. Like splashed everywhere. This crime was so personal. There was a massive wound over her right ear and temple, so massive that her bones were actually protruding out of it. Near Mrs. Cohen was the bronze ram's head, remember, that Ronald had taken to defend his wife and himself. The ram's head was laying close by Mrs. Cohen, as well as a stone statue. The wedding gifts, the ram's head and the statue, were both bloodstained. So they were the weapons used to murder Mrs. Cohen. At midnight, Lieutenant Floris Johannes Mossert, the head of murder and robbery, arrive at the home. He then inspects everything and he questions Mr. Cohen. Mr. Cohen, Ronald, tells Lieutenant Mossert the whole story. As I told you, he went to the bathroom, he came back, he had seen an intruder in his home. He couldn't get to the intruder because his wife was between them. He then picked up a bronze ram's head and he tried to defend his wife and himself against the intruder, and then he had blacked out. He also told Lieutenant Mossert that the intruder was about 26 to 27 years old. He had a V-shaped face, blonde hair, and hollow cheeks. He was also dressed in sportswear. Now, Lieutenant Mossert was extremely suspicious of Mr. Cohen's story because he couldn't remember if the intruder had hit him or bit him, but he could remember what the intruder looked like. So Lieutenant Mossert was like, your story is very fragmentary because you can tell me exact details of what this man looks like, but you can't tell me what he had done to you in order for you to black out. Because remember, he's claiming that he blacked out and he woke up next to his wife. He also told Lieutenant Mossert that he had remembered the intruder smiling at him like he was enjoying hurting his wife. Like, dude, just shut up. This guy already finds you so dupe suspicious, but you like carrying on talking all this shit. I'd also be like, I'm feeling a little bit suspicious because you can tell me this man's exact description, but you can't tell me that he hit you and that's where your concussion blackout came from. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Cohen was examined by Weinberg District Surgeon, who found no evidence of a blow to Mr. Cohen's head. So there was no head trauma. How did you black out if there's no head trauma? I also just want to put emphasis on how violent this crime was. Like, this intruder literally smashed your wife's head in. That's like heavy, guys. That's some heavy stuff. Early hours of the morning on 6th of April 1970, Lieutenant Mossert arrests Mr. Cohen for the murder of his wife. Of course, money can buy you anything, so Mr. Cohen gets off on 10,000 Rand bail. Now, this case of an intruder in Constantia is becoming public interest. I mean, people are like, are we safe? Is my Gucci bag gonna be safe? And Mr. Cohen, just by the way, Ronald, is going about his normal life like what even happened. July 2nd of 1970, 2 months after he's been out on bail and nothing's come of this case, he goes to Markham's Tailors in Cape Town and he has his beautiful 3-piece suit tailored. Allegedly, while he was at the tailor's, he had seen the intruder, who was wearing a hat and carrying a blue airline bag, walk across the road on the opposite side of Markham's. He then says he shouted and ran after the intruder, but the intruder got away. Here's where the fishy part comes, guys. The tailors at Markham said that there was no such event. Nothing like this had happened. Wonder what happened then. The fact that the intruder got away angered Mr. Cohen, so he released an advertisement saying, "Have you seen this man?" with a 5,000 Rand reward. The trial of Ronald began on August 24th, 1970. The state prosecutor had said that this is a tough case because they have so much to prove beyond reasonable doubt. It was a difficult task, but they believe that Mr. Ronald Cohen had killed his wife because of the evidence that Lieutenant Mossert had provided the state with. Like, he reported or he says that there was an intruder, but there was no signs of forced entry or other fingerprints or any sort of evidence to prove that there was actually an intruder. No trace, nothing. So there was no evidence of an intruder, and then secondly, there was no motive for an intruder to come in and murder his wife. At the trial, only Mr. Johnson spoke, and he had said that he had spoken to his daughter on the night of the 5th of April after she had arrived home, and she seemed happy to be home. Now, Ronald also testified that his marriage was extremely happy. So, wow, I can't believe, you've only been married for like 3 years, but your wife's totes cool with you not coming on a holiday with her and the kids. Another thing was nothing was missing from the library. Nothing was missing, nothing was stolen. There was no indication of sexual abuse towards Mrs. Cohen. It was just very suspicious that an intruder would come in, not steal anything, and just kill Susan. A neurosurgeon at Catrice Hospital by the name of Dr. J.C. de Villiers had come in to examine and testify on behalf of Ronald to say that Ronald had experienced a type of light head injury called islands of memory. Now, this became super controversial in the trial because it was sort of like a leg for the defense to stand on. This happened when there was head trauma, but not severe enough for you to have memory loss. I don't know how true it was, but it was there and it was a thing. I don't believe it, but each to their own. 18th of September 1970, Mr. Cohen was found guilty of murdering his wife. As judgment was passed, Cohen looked over at his father, leaned over the bench, and patted his dad on the head. It's weird, eh? It's a weird thing to do. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison for the murder of his wife, Suzanne Cohen. I'm gonna tell you this part of the story because it grates my bones. There are no traces of mental illness on behalf of Ronald. So, like, there were no signs of him having mental illness or being out of control of his surroundings and what he's aware of. And no such thing, guys. No such thing. The only thing that the defense was standing on right now was this island of memory condition, which I think he paid the doctor to say. I don't want to say that. I don't want to discredit a medical doctor, but I personally think that money can buy you freedom. Here's the part that gets me. I'm going to tell you after I put my lashes on. So Ronald Cohen was sentenced to 12 years behind bars. And the reason being he only got 12 years is because the judge had stated that he diminished responsibility. Diminished responsibility means that the accused had suffered from a abnormality of the mind, which in turn made him commit this crime when he was out of his natural state of mind, which is a whole bunch of horse, my personal opinion. After he had served 5 years in prison, he had been released on parole, and he returned to the South Cape home where Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, Susan's parents, were looking after his children in his absence. He said that he loves his kids dearly, he loved his wife dearly, and he is also very appreciative of the fact that his parents-in-law had looked after his kids during this time, despite how difficult it might have been for them. Guys, please don't tell me you believe this. That you think this oak committed this crime under diminished responsibility. You legit must have been so angry with your wife to bash her head in and leave her bones exposed. I just want to let everyone know that there was no intruder. That part of the story is completely false. I think he even admitted to it being false. Who does that, though? And if this diminished responsibility state of mind judgment is the truth, why would you let someone walk free after 5 years if they might commit this crime again? I'm not saying that people shouldn't walk free, but I mean, if they have a situation that has to do with their mental health, should they not get proper rehabilitation? Proper help in a proper institute? I think that Mr. Ronald Vivian Cohen murdered his wife. Well, it's a fact that he murdered his wife. I mean, he went to prison for it. Personally, I think that they had tiffs and she went on holiday to get away from it, and she had decided that this isn't the type of marriage she wants to be in, and he was just not having it. That could be one of my possible theories. I'm not saying it's a fact. I just want to remind everyone that these stories I'm telling you are my personal opinion of the story. I do have my sources and I do a lot of research, but this is just what I think happened. It's a dangerous time to be saying these things, everyone's very sensitive. Mr. Cohen, I think you murdered your wife intentionally. And I feel so sorry for Mr. and Mrs. Johnson who still have to know you. I just think it's a whole bunch of shit. People not getting the proper punishments that are deserved. It's just crazy. It's too much. Thank you guys so much for spending your Tuesday with me. I just wanted to let you know that we are still trying to fight COVID, and I want you to make mindful choices when you do go outside. Sanitize, wash your hands, wear your masks. Remember to social distance. I hope you enjoyed this week's story. I hope you enjoy my look. I mean, I think that this look is it's fire. It's Tuesday. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Do you think he did it intentionally? I want us to talk. I feel like we never talk. I feel like a lot of people are commenting, but I'm not like responding, and I apologize. I see your comments, your one comment, my big fans. Stay safe, stay wary. There are psychopaths, and I'll see you next week Tuesday for another True Crime Tuesday.